All right, so this is the second part of our Commander 2019 retrospective. We're back talking about some more Commander-related topics for the year. Last time, if you look in the comment section, we'll have a link to the video of last week's where we talked about Commander 2019, Throne of Eldraine, as well as Core Set 2020. And now we're kind of getting into...
Modern Horizons?
Well, I was going to say the Commander bannings first.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah, very, very effective to Commander itself. We had a few bannings that kind of came up.
Which is kind of exciting. We haven't had any bannings in a while, so...
Yeah, it's been a few years. When they first came out, particularly Paradox Engine, when that was first released... You know, it was kind of a fun card for me to build around when I played Kumena, Tyrant of Araska. I just wanted to untap my creatures.
Yeah, but the way you build it and the way that everyone else builds it is people tend to just combo with it.
Yeah, most people tend to go infinite with just a few mana rocks.
Yeah.
And for my experience was I just want to be able to draw a card or put +1/+1 counters on everything. And it's a card that could accidentally go infinite pretty easily.
Yeah.
You know, even if you're not trying to produce infinite mana, you can. And so untapping all your non-land permanents is a pretty good effect, turns out, you know? I mean, Seedborn Muse is another one of those effects where you get to untap your lands and...
You get to untap everything.
Yeah, untap your permanents at every other player's untap step. And so, you know, 3 untaps with that, it's not necessarily infinite, but it's still pretty powerful for the same mana. The other card was Iona, Shield of Emeria. I've had a few discussions about this card in particular.
It's it just doesn't feel right, at least to me. Like, let's say Austin's playing a mono blue deck and I'm just like Iona on blue.
Yeah, I don't have a counter spell, by the way.
It just makes it so he can't play Magic.
Yeah.
It makes it no fun for the rest of the table.
Right. It kind of forced you to play certain cards like you know, any kind of colorless removal like your Meteor Golem or your Duplicate in order to deal with it. Yeah, if you didn't get any of those cards, then you weren't able to cast any spells until, you know, you were pretty much dead because it's a 7/7 flyer. With
protection from
blue.
You. Yeah, from you. From whatever color you want.
Right. Well, so that was one of the cards where we didn't really see it as much because, you know, heavy stacks effects like that stop players from playing Magic. You know, you kind of want your opponents to be able to interact with your stacks pieces, at least in our play group. It was one of those things where, you know, you can have an effect that is on a creature that, you know, a simple removal spell can deal with it, but if you call Iona on black, you know...
Yeah, then you just need friends at the table. But
exactly.
Usually when someone plays Iona, no one's really happy because they usually hit more than one person with it.
Yeah, and so a couple players are cut off half of their deck, and then that happens to be all the cards in their hand. So it's understandable when a card like that leaves the format. It didn't really affect our playgroup that much, but that was fine. Another card that actually came off the ban list was the Painter Servant, and so I don't think we've played it yet, have we?
No.
No,
the only thing I know why it was banned.
Mm-hmm.
Again, combos, but
right.
I haven't really tried to put it in a deck yet.
No, I mean,
just because I don't really...
Unless you are playing a combo deck, it doesn't really lend well to many strategies. There is the one particular commander that it works really well with in more of a casual environment, which is the Blind Seer. Because Painter Servant, when it comes into play, you choose a color. All cards that aren't in play, spells, permanents, are the chosen color in addition to their other colors. And so you can make every card in the game white, you know. Then white gets a boost, right? Because everything is that color now.
If only that's how it works.
Right.
You can do some other like weird stuff with it too, like... Let's say you want a red or blue elemental blast something, or
yeah, exactly.
Even like a a wipeout wouldn't work or anything.
Well, yeah, particularly like in a deck like with Blind Seer, where changing target spells or permanents to a color, it lends really well to that strategy. You mentioned the blue elemental blast, effects like that, turning him into red, or the washout, all permanents of the chosen color return back to the opponent's hands. So that's fun. It's supposed to be enjoyable to be able to do some wacky synergies with something like that, as opposed to being able for us to combo off. And that's pretty much all about the commander bannings. I mean, it came as a bit of a surprise. I think at the time I still did own a copy of Paradox Engine in my trade binder to trade away.
I think it's still there.
Right.
To this day.
Exactly. And I did have Iona, but I hadn't played it in a while. And so now that they're gone, they're part of my ongoing collection to hopefully collect all the band cards and just kind of...
we're doing this again?
Right. Have them sit in the back of my binder, never to be used.
Good luck on collecting some of those.
Right, exactly. Commander, it's a little bit different. Okay. Before the commander bannings, for us there was a set that didn't really have any relevance to our format, and in reality it ended up boosting the power level greatly, which was Modern Horizons. So this set was a modern set.
Yes.
So it was meant to help the modern format, and
it helped
Commander just
quite
as
a
well.
bit.
Yeah. I mean, there's always been those jokes anytime a supplemental product comes out that it's Commander Masters.
I think they're doing this on purpose.
Right, where they're including cards that are really good for Commander.
The land set, though, is in there. Really happy to see it.
Yeah. Horizon Canopy. Printed in 5 other colors.
But quite affordable still.
Yes.
Which is surprising. I thought those definitely would have went up in price more, like Horizon Canopy did. But
yes.
It's great dual color lands.
They tap, sacrifice, draw a card.
Draw a card.
Yeah. It's great because they help you when you flood out, especially. I mean, that's why I play cards like Lonely Sandbar and Forgotten Cave, because for a single mana...
or play them early game.
Yeah. You get some extra card draw, and then those are duels, so they produce extra mana.
You're going to hurt yourself a little bit, but hey, you start at 40
it's
life.
Commander, yeah.
Then it also came out with the talismans, which is really nice. I know a lot of people play them. They tap for either a colorless or one of the 2 colors.
Yeah, we had the other cycle of the allied talismans already. And so we finally got the enemy talismans for Commander. And it really helped boost some of the enemy colors, because that's one of the things, is those colors seem to be lacking a little bit in consistent, ramp and consistent, extra abilities that allow you to tap for both your colors. I mean, you're kind of forced to play more basics and more rocks that are outside your colors. So this helped boost those. I'd like to see more like this in the future. More
enemy and ally stuff.
Right. More ways to produce those colors, those 5 colors.
Those harder to find cards.
Yeah.
So you don't have to throw a random, Fellwar Stone, even though that's still good.
Yeah, Fellwar Stone's pretty good. But yeah, like a Mind Stone effect, where it taps for colorless, or if you're not
just
playing,
a colorless.
Exactly.
We also had cards like Prismatic Vista. It's a fetch land for a basic, which is really nice.
Yeah, we had 10 fetch lands that existed in Magic before,
Now we have 12.
Now we have 12. Fabled Passage, as we mentioned before, and now Prismatic Vista.
We know there's more than 12 fetch lands. We're just counting the good ones.
Right, the ones that tap, sacrifice, go search for a land. You pay life, and you get to grab a basic with Prismatic Vista.
It's still really good, though.
Yeah, and it's played in the modern format as well. That's why it was created. And so it's one of those things where we get this extra little boost from some cards that you include in the set.
Yeah, we also had the Force cycle in this one.
Yeah.
Which, not too overpowered.
No, I think half of them were really good. The other half, you white and red, you kind of they fell a little bit far behind. Force of Vigor and Force of Negation really, they did something that the others didn't. They're more interaction. And even the mono black
Force of Despair?
Correct. Force of Despair is a nice removal. It's one of those things where if you have an abundance of card advantage, these forces really help you, deal with some of what your opponent's doing while not taking away from your mana. By pitching a card of the color, so with Force of Vigor, you exile a green card from your hand to destroy 2 artifacts or enchantments.
Up to 2.
Well,
it doesn't have to be exactly 2. That's what makes it really good. Let's say you just want to destroy 1. You don't have to have 2 targets.
You don't need to have mana open either. So
yes,
that's what's really good.
We don't even have to talk about Force of Negation.
Yeah, it's a pact of it's a pact in negation. It's a Force of Will. It's a negate.
We don't even need to talk about that.
It's a very good Magic card, which, that's one of the things. The interaction from this set is what really helped set it above some of the others. You had access to a card like Winds of Abandon.
In my opinion,
it's a staple.
It's a staple. It is a lot better Path of Exile. I think if I had to choose to put Path in my deck or Winds, I think I would put Winds every day.
Because of the overload cost.
Because of the overload cost.
Right. The versatility of Winds of Abandon is what you're saying, why you would play Winds of Abandon over the other.
Yeah. Exile everyone's creatures.
Yeah. And they get to search for basics.
Yeah. They also got a white gift. Make a 3/3 elephant, destroy something.
Right. It's a color shifted beastman.
Yeah. Which is nice. So even though its force wasn't that great, white got some pretty good cards.
They did. Next, some of the legendary creatures to talk about. I in particular really loved the first Sliver. That was one of the cards, Slivers getting a bit of a boost, and some more Sliver creatures that came out in the set as well.
Well, you just love Slivers in general.
Yeah, I'm very big on tribal, and Slivers in particular is a very aggressive tribal style deck that, gets a lot of value from the more creatures you have, and I like creature-based decks. And so the first Sliver kind of added an extra element of... It had the most variance.
Yeah, it means, you can take out and I think it was a replacement for Sliver Queen for the most part.
Yeah. So I would play Sliver Overlord in the deck and as the commander for my old Sliver deck, and you would use Sliver Overlord's activated ability to pay 3 mana to go grab any Sliver from your deck, and you would grab the best ones every single time.
Yes.
You would give it double strike, you would give it flying, and then you would attack for game, likely in 2 turns, take out a player.
Now, with the first Sliver, you don't know what's in the box.
Right, exactly. You're revealing... You get to control it a little bit.
But not... By it's always
adjusting
random.
The top cards of your library, with a Sensei's Divining Top. But, for the most part, Sliver spells you control have Cascade, and it has Cascade, so you are playing Slivers from the top cards of your library, and in a perfect world... you could play 4 Slivers back to back. Because once the first Sliver is on board, you cast a 4-mana Sliver from your hand, and then a 3-mana Sliver from the top of your library, then a 2-mana Sliver from the top of your library.
And this is why you kill the Sliver player first, guys?
Right. It's not the only one that we saw from this set that had a lot of power in terms of legendary creatures.
No, there's one of my personal favorites is Hogak.
Yeah.
It got banned in Modern.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It was really strong. It's really strong and consistent in Commander, too.
Yeah.
A nice Dredge
thing. Dredge got its own commander.
Who doesn't like it? 8/8 for free for the most part.
Yeah.
With Trample.
Exactly. being able to cast Hogak at any point, you know, like basically on turn 2, even in Commander, and keep it around, you know, felt really strong. Like,
well, once you cast it the first time, it just kind of keeps on coming back unless you exile someone's graveyard or pretty much exile someone's graveyard and keep their board clear.
Yeah, and there were some, like, I know that when we saw some of the other ones spoiled, like Yawgmoth, Thran Physician, like a lot of people went towards the combo of Undying, being able to put it back into the battlefield, and, you know, the same with Urza, Lord High Artificer, being able to tap your artifacts to add mana to your mana pool. You can do some crazy combo-centric type things. You know, there was definitely a lot of high power level in these 2 legendary creatures. For us, we maybe saw Yawgmoth once
or twice.
I played it a bit. It's good value. I think Yawgmoth in the 99 is one of the more powerful sacrifice outlets, being able to play it for 4 mana and sacrifice another creature to draw cards.
Yeah.
It's really great in the 99. I think it's a bit too strong in as a commander.
It puts a little target on your head. I think when you see this card or even Urza, most people think you are comboing.
Right, exactly. Urza is definitely more so, because all your 0 converted mana cost artifacts now tap for blue mana and allow you to essentially draw extra cards.
Yeah, so if you play those cards with people who kind of know the format, just don't be afraid if you get attacked a lot. Put a target on your back.
Urza, you know, also worked really well when it was released with that Paradox engine.
Yes.
And so Urza and Paradox engine were both around at the same time. Paradox engine got banned not too long ago, and it you know, Urza might have had something to do with it. It's very good.
I just think Paradox engine was overpowered a little bit.
Right. So we got a couple more sets that we're going to talk about here. Both of them are standard sets, and so they kind of gave you some more legendary creatures and some more cards that really, you know, added to the format. I think with War of the Spark in particular, one of the main topics I wanted to bring up with War of the Spark was the Tuck rule, because they released a set of commanders set of legendary creatures that say when they die, you may put them from the third from the top of the owner's library. And so this was something that was, you know, created for a standard set, and so it lended really well to being able to put these creatures back on the top of your library so that they didn't die. You know, that's what the gods did. And in Commander, you kind of had this rule where you weren't supposed to put your commander back in your library.
I think legally you can't, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that, but I think the only place your commander can go if you're playing on Moto is your graveyard.
Particularly on Magic Online, you cannot put your commander third from the top, but if you're playing in paper, you are kind of given this option of like, oh, do you want to be able to put the commander back on the top of your library? And so that kind of brought up this, like, you know, for me in particular, this conversation that was to be had every time a new game came out. It was like, are we playing with the Tuck rule or not? You know, because
most people say no.
Right.
Are you? What's wrong with you? I play my commander for a reason.
Yeah.
But I don't mind the Tuck rule at all.
Yeah.
But that could be just because we started playing when.
Right, when before the Tuck rule was...
The Tuck rule was a thing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, let's get Chaos Warped or Warp World back then or something.
Right, put your commander back in your deck, and now they have that replacement effect, and so it kind of brought up a conversation of where, you know, it's interesting to see something like that come back and in the conversation, you know, where we get to talk about the Tuck rule again. There were a couple other cards that came out in the set.
A lot of Planeswalkers.
Yeah, it was the Planeswalker set.
Which is nice. There was a lot of high power. I don't know about high powered. There was a lot of nice Planeswalkers in there. Ashiok.
Right.
Nice removal in blue black. Just remove everyone's graveyard.
Yeah. I think it's definitely become a staple in terms of, your Dimir graveyard hate. For 3 mana, you have a card that not only gets rid of your opponent's graveyards, but also has this static ability that a lot of the planeswalkers from the set had, where as they sit out, they're just stalling your opponents out from doing things. So Ashiok in particular says your opponents can't search their libraries,
It also gives Super Friends deck a nice little boost, and so you don't see the same 20-ish planeswalkers played all the time. You can now see a nice little variance of it.
That was definitely something. Like, there were a couple commanders that came out in the set, like Storev. You kind of see him as like this commander that it was in the Golgari colors, and it had this just small line of text that said, or planeswalker. Whenever it dealt combat damage, you got to return a planeswalker from your graveyard back to your hand, and that was one of those cards where, we got to see more Super Friends decks. Like I mentioned the Rolesk earlier.
I think, they nicely balanced the planeswalkers. Like, they weren't really...
They treated them as, like, stronger sorceries.
They weren't Oko overpowered,
right?
But
they were strong enough to where, like, they give you 2 things. As they're out, they're kind of either preventing your opponents or giving yourself advantages, and then their activated abilities got you some extra value.
Yeah, I think that's what people were most concerned about when they said they're gonna come up pretty much with every pack's gonna get a planeswalker.
Right.
Is power level.
Yeah.
We're either getting really good or really bad, but I think they did a nice job of in between. There's some really good planeswalkers in here. There's some okay ones, a few bad ones, but
and
I think
we also got like some nice interaction, because that was one of the things. Like, while we didn't get a card that interacts with emblems, that was one of the things that came up, where when a planeswalker activates that emblem ability in Commander, especially, it sits around the table and you're not able to interact with it. You got a few cards that allowed you to interact with planeswalkers. Casualties of War destroys a planeswalker. Angrath's Rampage does the same, causing a player to sacrifice a planeswalker. We got some really good interaction in the set with D-Spark and Dovin's Veto. A nice counterspell, 2 mana. Like, we got a lot of nice low converted mana cost interaction from this set, which is always great for Commander. Like, when you are able to play something and then leave up just enough mana to be able to, like, protect whatever you have on board.
Yeah, no, it's I'm glad that they're going more towards, it looks like they're having a lot more targeted removal instead of just mass board wipes.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that, because most of those have they require something like the D-Spark has to be converted mana cost 4 or greater.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that.
Yeah, a lot of the legendary creatures, they allow you to kind of refuel as well. So they allow you to, you play all this targeted removal, and then you're able to refill your hand. Like Niv Mizzet Reborn, for every multicolored pair, you were able to put a bunch of cards in your hand for every guild color. There were 10 guilds, and around this time, it was the release of Guilds of Ravnica and Ravnica Allegiance, which is kind of the next set we're going to talk about here. Ravnica Allegiance allowed you to have access to, 5 different colors.
And then the other Ravnica was still in standard at the time.
Yeah.
So you pretty much had access to all 10 guilds.
Right.
Which was nice.
Yeah, and the guilds that we're going to talk about with this next topic is the Orzhov, the Gruul, your Azorius, your Simic, and your Rakdos. This was released in January of 2019, the beginning of the year, the first set to come out, and it was kind of the other half of this 10-set guild series. I definitely enjoyed playing
few of these
with the guild themes in particular. I liked that the strengths that they lended to each of the strategies. Like, they each had their own thing. Like, you talk about color identity and you talk about commanders as, like, they all have something that goes well with them.
I think they were very on par with what the guilds do.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that, but I know you really liked the Prime Speaker.
Yeah, I had some experience with Prime Speaker Vanifar, which was basically your birthing pod on a stick. Again, our type of content doesn't really play much combinations, but it's a very high value creature.
Yeah.
And so being able to cycle through most of your deck and, get a bunch of card draw going, a bunch of ramp going, it feels good.
And then I know you like to play Oops All Creatures there for a little bit.
Yeah, I actually had an experience with a lot of the legendary creature, like the face creatures. Teysa Karlov I've played, Nikya of the Old Ways with it was like 62 creatures and Primal Surge. And then even I did a podcast with the guys from Legendary Creatures where we talked about Lavinia Azorius Renegade. And that one, I definitely, it's one of those soft stacks commanders. It lended really well to stopping your opponents from not being able to cast non-creature spells more than they had lands. So you keep their land count low, and then you play enough counters, things to stop creatures.
Are you saying you want to blow up lands?
The occasional strip mine. Playing the occasional land destruction. We don't want to go as far as mass land destruction here, but I mean, being able to stop your opponents from taking advantage of the game is also as much fun as taking advantage of the game.
He's saying not letting your opponents play Magic is fun.
Well, to a certain extent. So to kind of round things out here, we have a couple cards from the set of Ravnica Allegiance. I wanted to talk about Guardian Project first. Guardian Project is a mono-green staple, similar to the Great Henge that we talked about earlier.
It's just
it's card draw.
Yeah.
It's a commander card specifically. Guardian Project was printed in a standard set, and it is very good in Commander.
3 and a green. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, if it doesn't have the same name as a card creature you control or in your graveyard, you draw a card.
Right. So in a singleton format,
you just draw a card every time you play a creature.
Exactly. And that's great because for 4 mana, you're going to keep casting your commander. You're playing probably 30, 35 creatures in your deck. And so you draw until you get, the card you need to win the game. And a card like that is the End Race Forerunners, that help. That card came out of this set, and it kind of, for me, felt like a nice replacement for Craterhoof, because we hadn't played Craterhoof in a while.
You don't like playing a card that says I win?
No, cards that say I win wasn't really necessarily my speed. End Race Forerunners was a substitution for the Craterhoof. It said, enters the battlefield, other creatures you control get +2/+2 and vigilance and trample. And so it was a way to, if you have the necessary pieces you need, you can get there. A card that needs 5 or 6 other, high-powered creatures, give them trample, and then you can win the game. Because a card that, we kind of talked about when the set came out, you want to be able to interact with the board state. We find that games ending out of nowhere can be a little stale because you had some things you wanted to keep doing.
Yeah, we don't tend to go for, like I said, we don't tend to do tooth and nail, entwine and stuff that just kind of lets you win when you have haste.
Yeah.
Or anything like that.
And so a card that actually came out of the set was very similar that said, in a weird way, you win the game, So Smothering Tithe. It is a very powerful, more so than we thought initially for our play group, being able to help you win the game.
It's very problematic, to which no player really wants to pay 2 during their draw step to not give a player a treasure token.
Yeah, so they pay 2 mana so you don't get 1 mana. And that's every draw. That's not only every draw step, that was with every card drawn for the rest of the game as long as this enchantment is out. So with wheel effects or with any kind of card draw effect you were producing, a ridiculous amount of mana from this one card.
For Commander, it probably turned into the MVP of this set just because of how good it was. I think it's better than Rhystic Study.
Yeah.
Personally.
No, I get that.
Just because it gives you so much extra mana, because people don't really pay for Rhystic Study as it is, which you should always pay your taxes.
Right. I think that was one of the things, like these two cards in the same deck, you know, one was producing you mana, the other was producing you card draw. It kind of gave you a lot of advantages over your opponents. And so, you know, these are cards that we don't really play anymore. I think we tried it out when it first came out. It was definitely something we
did try it out, and it was kind of too strong for our play group.
Yeah.
Because it put a we all know in our play group kind of to pay the extra.
Yeah.
So what it really did was made us have 2 less mana each turn, at least. And then made us think about playing our draw spells. And
yeah, exactly. It kind of made us just spend more time on the game rather than actually
advancing it at all.
Yeah, and the only way that you could take advantage of it was with that wheel effect, like Wheel of Fortune, where you would just draw a bunch of cards at that point and get 28 treasure, you know.
Yeah.
It was too much for or actually it's 21 treasure with a new hand. Which is still too much. It was one of those things where it went a bit too far. But that's fine. I mean, that's kind of one of the things that our channel does. I mean, if you look back to our philosophy update video, which was the one that we put out before this, it was, you know, kind of talking about cards we don't really play. And I think that, you know, we mentioned cards like this in the video. And that, you know, going forward, we're going to have more episodes where we talk about, you know, that kind of thing. And hopefully you'll get a better understanding of our play group from seeing the list of cards that we put together. I'll also mention that, you know, for our next podcast, we're going to be talking about more what's to come as opposed to what, you know, this year's been like. Because overall, I thought it was a good year, right?
Yeah, I think it was a lot better than the previous year, 2018, especially with the Commander products and how they're, I think, trying to stuff more legendaries into their regular sets, it felt like this year, than it did last year.
Yeah, there's definitely, I mean, well, I was thinking Dominaria, but like, that was...
okay, there was one set last year, okay? There was Dominaria, but I feel like the quality kind of... It was really nice. The quality of the legendaries for the most part was there. Yeah. They weren't
Every single set had something to add to the format.
They weren't really too powerful.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just feels bad, like in previous years when you play Commander, you see a set come out and be like, oh, there's nothing I could really use here, which happened. It wasn't a lot, but it still happened. And this year felt there was always something that you could pick up or add to one of your favorite decks.
Right. And yeah, that's kind of how we'll talk about Commander 2020 with our next podcast. You'll kind of be able to see that they've kind of ramped that up. You know, they've done a bit more, and so, you know, we'll kind of talk about our thoughts and opinions on that. As far as this year went, it was a good year, and you know, I think that kind of wraps up this podcast, you know, this episode. If there's any cards that you liked from any of the sets that we mentioned, you know, Ravnica Allegiance, Modern Horizons, all that stuff, you know, if there's something that you felt really lended well to Commander that maybe we missed, you know, leave a comment, definitely let us know. We're always, you know, trying to communicate, you know, with the community about cards, sleeper cards. Anytime a new legendary creature comes out, you know, there are cards from old sets that might be viable as well.
There's just so many cards out there that you can never... Right. It's really hard to keep track of.
Yeah, so definitely leave a comment of what you thought about 2019, what you're thinking about, you know, previous years, or what's to come, you know, what the future holds. So thanks everybody for watching, and have a good night.
Bye.